Hooray! What's going on, everybody? This is Pepper and Dragor. We just got back from Anthrocon, feeling a little sloppy today. Gonna have kind of a sloppy show.
Yeah, this is the sloppy seconds of podcasts. No, wait.
This is definitely sloppy. That's what we're calling this. This is episode 42, sloppy seconds. We need
Okay.
30. Puts 30 sloppy seconds on the clock. We say sloppy seconds because at the end of this, you're gonna hear an episode of the show that we recorded at Anthrocon 1 week ago today. I'm recording this on Sunday. We always record on Sundays. Come talk to us in the Patreon, like patreon.com. Last minute politics, whatever the hell it is. And you're going to hear us talking outside and with not awful audio quality, but slightly worse audio quality about some things that we're also going to mention today. We're sticking that after this one, so you have the option to continue listening to our bonus show or stop listening after this one. Dragor, what do you remember about our Sunday AC thing?
I remember we recorded it with the Yeti mic, and we'll see how it sounds. Otherwise, we talked a lot about, there's a presentation that Pepper saw at BLFC that I saw at Anthrocon and that I believe is going to keep making the rounds. And the title is something along the lines of Organizing in the Furry Fandom, or How to Organize the Furry Fandom. Go check it out. We spend a lot of the episode talking about the content of it and how things are a little bit different. And the number one takeaway, and this is just true, go to any convention. Conventions are hurting for staff. Our physical presence lifeblood is very strained right now, and as much as people want to go to the safe space of a FurCon and have a party, it's also run by us. Please volunteer. Please get more involved.
Oh, you want me to... I don't have a ton of thoughts on this, but I wanted to slip it in there. Talk about a conference that I'm going to be going to. We're going to be going to, actually. So August, a conference that will make people angry. The fact that we're even going to... It's my mini point after this. So, CPI, Center for Political Innovation. It's a bunch of Marxist-Leninists. They don't come out and just throw that on in the front of it. But if you read even like 2 paragraphs down, you're like, oh, I understand.
Well, and if you just look at any of the names, it's, oh, I understand.
They're doing a thing in Deerfield, Illinois, the Chicago area, so it's technically Deerfield, at the Hyatt Regency Deerfield on August 6th. There is an event called Unite Against the Imperialists. Basically, you're going to sit in a room and listen to some speeches and clap and then get to hang out with other comrades. You do not have to be specifically a Marxist-Leninist to be there. You don't even have to be a communist at all, but you do have to be respectful.
Yes, yes.
If you show up to be a cock, you'll just get kicked out like anywhere else. Also, furries, if you're listening to this is not like a fursuit event. Do not dress up. I would suggest like business casual, jeans, t-shirt. I'll be there probably in khakis and a polo because I want to look like a real serious individual discussing politics.
Look like exactly like I do at FurCons out of fursuit. I will be in one of my jumpsuits with a rainbow belt and my cabbie hat.
So I tweeted that I'm going to be at this.
I saw.
People are mad. I say people. It's like it's 2 people. It's like 1 person, but it's just like the greater point is not that I want to go, oh, wah, someone was like upset at me online, because that's not the point I want to make. People are mean to me online all the time. I don't care. It's just so weird how when I kind of got in this conversation with somebody about furry nonsense, but hey, you gotta think about how and when you use guilt by association. I have
like
never heard somebody say that we should not go to this Democratic Party event because of all of the horrible associations that various Democratic leaders have. I have never heard that we should not watch CNN, MSNBC, like any of the mainstream media sources. I've never been told we should not consume them because of guilt by association. And I don't want to fucking blow all of your minds, but every single one of them have platformed Nazis, neo-Nazis.
Yep.
If you see the difference, the classic and the new version. what are they? Freaking white supremacist Klansmen. Freaking David Duke is on those networks all the time, and you never go, well, how dare you watch CNN? What are you, a Nazi? They have had Nazis on their network, and that's not me making excuses for like the CPI putting up. The CPI is in fact not going to be putting a shit ton of Nazis on the stage in front of you. But I get this like 50 degrees of Kevin Bacon. This guy took a picture with this guy who tweeted at this guy who retweeted that guy, and that's why, Pepper, you're a Nazi for attending this communist event.
Okay, now, devil's advocate, normally that is the case. In this particular one, we get to jump right to, and unreasonably so, because if you dig into anything, but why is it happening in particular? Because on Twitter, they pointed out Russian state-affiliated media Caleb T. Maupin is talking about it.
I don't know if you've heard, but Caleb Maupin actually has done every bad thing that's ever happened in America.
But in particular, in this case, you're going to get a stronger reaction on this one because he is directly talking about it and claims to be there.
He's the director of the CPI.
Yeah, but I thought, one, he was in Russia, and two, I thought he couldn't come here.
No, Caleb lives in New York. He's lived in New York City for a long time.
Oh, well then.
Before that, they were in the Cleveland, Ohio area, and they were like selling communist newspapers on the street. And they're like 15. Like they've been in this shit forever, and it's super whack that everyone's like, famed neo-Nazi Caleb Maupin. I'm like, dude, call him whatever you want. You can be annoyed that he's a Christian, whatever. If you're gonna call him a Nazi, you're just not a serious person. Like, he is a communist. You might not like him. That's fine. Guess what? You don't have to like every communist to agree with communism.
Correct.
We didn't give up on nuclear physics because some Nazis helped us invent nuclear physics. I accidentally picked a great example.
You did.
Wow. That was unintentional.
Except, today's energy situation is currently degrowth focused and anti-nuclear.
So, can we talk about the LaRouche people? Because that's who you'll start.
All right, I have been wanting to bring this up. Give me the quick TLDR. Why do I know the name LaRouche?
So I'm definitely not an expert on LaRouche, on the like LaRouche movement or philosophy. I listened to like a couple hours of a guy talking about it, and I'm like, all right, a lot of this we seem to agree on. They're not labor theory of value people. They're concerned with like their big idea that kind of is that like people should get compensated or treated based on like innovation, and they say that they have a way to quantify that because you're like, how do you
they're meritocracy assholes. Got it.
It's not.
What you just fucking described was meritocracy. Oh my god!
It doesn't. From what I've heard, like I said, I'm not a LaRouche expert. From what I've heard them talking about, that does not then lead to if you don't innovate somehow, you deserve to starve.
I understand that, but meritocracy, we have still established scientifically, has too much bias to actually work. Yeah, that is the foundation for why people don't like it. Not like, oh, you're a eugenicist. Like, I'm not saying that. God damn it! I'm just saying it doesn't work.
That's also probably why I am not a LaRoucheist. I don't know what you call somebody who is big into the LaRouche shit. A LaRoucher?
I mean, my quick understanding now that I recall is, depending on which group and which era, it was cult-like.
And that's the thing. This isn't even defending the actual dude. In the thing I listened to, they're like, yeah, LaRouche himself is kind of a shit. But the part where all the agreement was on, because they were talking about energy, and the LaRouche people are big into like, hey, you have to do nuclear. You can't just go directly to wind, solar, period, end all be all wind, solar only.
That's why this name's coming up.
That's why because they agree with communists there. Like, that's a big point of agreement on energy policy is, hey, we cannot just, ta-da, we are all solar now. Like, it just does not work that way. And the people who know that are the oil companies. And maybe that's why they're doing all this quick, immediately switch to only what they call green energy sources. And I'm like, dude, nuclear is carbon nothing. It's not carbon neutral. It doesn't like no carbon is emitted. The only thing that is emitted is steam, and then you get barrels of nuclear waste, which, Jesus Christ, there's no comparison to the amount of waste produced blown directly into the air by a fucking coal plant and what you get at the end of a modern nuclear facility.
It is minuscule. in
We have
comparison.
time to deal with it because it's all in a barrel. It's not sprayed directly into your mom's mouth or whatever the
And
fuck
to all
we're
of the
doing.
people that are like, oh, but nuclear waste leaks. Like, do you not understand that with a little bit of investment, we can put this shit where humans and animals both are not?
Yeah, this is where us and LaRouche people would apparently be having a great conversation because we fully agree on these things. And that's the parts that I agree with. If there's
Context. So
Go
the
for it.
reason I asked this and the reason this is coming up is because when apparently now on Twitter or anywhere else, if you start talking about anything pro-nuclear,
You're a
the
LaRouche
guilt
dude.
by association is you share this idea with what the LaRouche people agree with. We hate the LaRouche people because either they're my team or if you look at the meritocracy stuff, that's actually really not good. But just because we happen to agree on nuclear, just because they are technically correct on nuclear does not make them technically correct on their horse shit.
You agree with the things you agree on, and you can work together in an organized like, this is
Yeah.
a relatively large one, but like, do people think that I'm going to go to this conference, that they're going to get up and say, everyone here should be a fascist? And I'm going to be like, yeah. Like, how fucking
Actually, you and I
dumb.
are going to go, excuse me?
Oh.
Well, all right, we'll assess the situation of immediate danger, because if that actually is what happens, that means our ability to sniff out a cult is bad.
We'll just sneak out of the room like, oh my God.
We're going to Homer Simpson into the bushes out of here.
I don't know what happened. But I mean, we'll come back with an honest report, and I bet you we're going to hear a hell of a lot, like the exact same shit we've been hearing from this people online every day. That's why I like them so. Like the CPI people shit on them for what they're honest. It's weird that they're called grifters, but the people who I see who are most willing to shred their own reputation over a fucking opinion are the communists online. They don't give a fuck. They're going to say what they think is right, no matter what damage it does to them or their money, which is the opposite of a grift. I don't know. I've always felt that they said exactly what they were talking about, and over the last 3 years or so, that is what I have seen.
Yeah, it sure feels that way. If I can come around and actually enjoy Peter Coffin, so much so that I took a screenshot of his tweets, sent them to you, and instead of going, what the fuck, said, hey, I really like this.
This kind of builds in what we're saying. I'm just going to read that exact quote. It's Pete Coffin saying, I want socialism with American characteristics. And if you have like the reaction to that statement, this is a trap that exposes people's lack of critical understanding of Marx, etc. You cannot erase the history of a place when you put socialism there. So the idea, this is me talking again, the idea that if socialism happens in America, that it would be anyone else's, what's it going to be Chinese socialism? What's it going to be German socialism? We aren't Germans. We aren't China. We are America. We have breathed, we breathe American air. We think American thoughts. Our parents are American. We were born, excluding like, immigrants, etc. But like acting as if you're going to somehow install this foreign form of socialism that has absolutely nothing to do with the country you live in is so anti-Marx. It's
This
hard
is
to
one of the
explain.
foundational things where you get leftist infighting for the most obvious of topics, guns. American
right.
socialism must reconcile that there are twice as many guns as people here. Whatever laws and solution and buyback and bans, whatever we get to, must materially address that no matter how much you hate guns, there are twice as many of them here as people. That is what that statement means.
No matter how much you hate cars, we have car infrastructure only here. So the idea that we can just snap tomorrow and suddenly all have high-speed rail, that's not happening. But if you want to talk about like, hey, how about we increase buses? Because buses can just use all of these roads we have. It's like, okay, we're having a goddamn conversation now. But if you're like, no, must be trains. It's like, well, what are we... Like, are you being anti-car because it's like a fandom? And also, if you can live your life without a car, great. I'm super happy for you. I can live most of my life without a car.
Can
Most
we
people
talk
can't.
about... Can we talk about real quick a thing you're going to see increasingly on communists and on Twitter leftists
Let's.
that as a gut reaction I had was, what the fuck? But then I thought about it for a second and went, let's find out. There is an icon that you will see on people's profiles, and it is a little bike emoji with a red circle and slash through it. And I am a cyclist.
Me
and
too.
I agree.
Me too. I have the time to take a leisurely bike ride, like for my own exercise and enjoyment and health. I ride my bike around because it's fun. It saves me on gas. I can do all the shit I need to do. I am not a mother of four. I do not have to work 90 hours a week at whatever job. I'm in a very lucky situation, and I do not take my material conditions and assume that they apply to every single American. That'd be highly un-Marxian. I want to finish that Peter the Coffin quote. Any socialism in America would have American characteristics. This is literally just saying, I want socialism. If you say, I want socialism with American characteristics, you're just saying, I want socialism, but in America. Historical materialism. We are a sequence of events that have led to this. The history, the material, along with that, the things that happened. Who owned what, who knocked what down, who built what, where, why. That leads to what we have now. There has never been a spontaneous, some new society just leapt from the brain of God and fucked onto the earth and grew. It doesn't happen.
I guess from the
history.
natives' perspective, the worst white storm of all showed up.
Oh.
That was probably altogether sudden. We spent generations living off the land, and then colonialists showed up. Oh, fuck.
Right?
I'm sorry, right. I'm not making light of it. The alternative is every waking moment is rage and crying. So, from the perspective of what you just said, of things don't happen out of nowhere. I'm well, bad things kind of happen out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's just for people who are unaware of the material conditions of a different place. They didn't have communication. The material conditions of England led a bunch of freaking entrepreneur dudes to show up in the U.S. and then I just want to immediately start talking about the U.S. government has signed this many treaties with native tribes and has broken every single one of them. And it's yeah, but now we can totally trust those exact same people to protect our rights with treaties, laws, right?
The biggest one that you'll hear people say here and there is weaponizing and abusing what's left of those treaties. With Roe v. Wade overturned, there's this idea that, native lands are sovereign lands, so put abortion clinics on them. And at no point when I saw this idea float up was it can we work with natives to help address that? No. It's we'll just use their land and as a gut reaction.
There's a lot of native people who don't like abortions. What are we gonna do? Fuck all of them? They all deserve to die? Because I don't think that. I'm willing to work with them, even though they don't hold my exact same set of morals. And yeah, you're talking about, it's hey, so we're gonna can we colonize this this 2,000 square feet for an abortion clinic, please? There's no fucking consistency. It's not a coherent ideology. It just bounces around with whatever's going on and seems like a good idea at the time, I guess.
Yeah, it's more of just a statement of when you hear this, no matter how well-intentioned it may be, it is one, inherently offensive, two, does not address the root cause of how this law in our system was undone and what other future implications it has, and three, the kernel of what we're actually talking about, right to privacy and body autonomy, both of those things do not have a sex or gender attached. Both of those things do not have a belief system attached. They are simple, direct statements that are easily enforceable.
So on the flip side, if you are a native doctor and you live on reservation land, you could look into whether or not you could be come on down, baby. Come to my house.
Hey,
I'm doing abortions all day.
If that is what those sovereign people choose to do, okay. That's kind of the whole point, right? We're on stolen land and we're supposed to not impose our will anymore, but we do anyway, right?
I saw a tweet talking about the same thing where it's oh, look at all these loopholes we have found for the Roe v. Wade thing. It's motherfucker, you think the judges are going to look at your clever loophole and be oh, you got me. They don't care. This all happened because judges can kind of just say whatever they want and aren't beholden to really anybody, except for, they all kind of follow I would say they follow the ideology of the ruling class, but I don't think there is some big ideological justification for fucking with abortion rights other than to keep us all fighting each other over it. I don't think it really benefits anyone.
Well, three things. So, while acknowledging that these systems and the way they have come together all came from various material bases, that does not negate or remove the fact that people do believe in such things. So yes,
it satisfies
we have
belief.
True believing Christian judges.
Sure, or we have
real
non-believing ones who just will say what they have to say to get in and stay in power. Because you bet your ass, if you're a crazy judge going the other way, you will get removed.
You sure will.
The beliefs it's not that they don't matter in a complete sense. They matter some, but on the scheme of nations and making laws, they kind of don't. Like, whether it's, oh, I believe this thing sincerely in my heart, or I'm gonna do it for the money, or I don't even know what's happening. I'm just like, whether it is the
for
material
various reasons,
end
the
result
belief aspect is the one that's trotted out as somehow being respectful. I believe X, therefore you must respect me. Whereas the person who goes along, the judge who does shitty things because that's what you do, is what you do. We have been sold that these are two different cases when materially the victim in such a situation, whether or not the person believed it, doesn't matter. But you always have respect beliefs as a card that, well, we're Democrats, and of course we support Roe v. Wade, but, we have to be, we still have to respect their beliefs. That's all part of the game. We are told this because that's a bounding box on how we are and are not allowed to fight with each other. We're even given parameters on how to fight with each other by our rulers.
If we could have an actual, honest, a conversation that wasn't just about, winning the team event that is Democrats and Republicans. If you actually got to have conversations with, it's not only Christians, but it's, everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say it. If you're just going to sit down with some Catholics and be like, okay, look, both of us have the same goal of minimizing the number of abortions that happen. How can we go about it? And we've all had this model conversation before. It's if you want less abortions, well, I think that people, not pundits, actual fucking everyday people are at least slightly receptive to that. I mean, the majority of the country is pissed about Roe v. Wade, and I'm sure some of those people who are pissed, who are voting in whatever or responding to whatever survey, are Catholics.
Yes.
A lot of them, the proletariat, is not all just a bunch of barbaric idiots. A lot of them are I want to keep hearing over and over from people is, I think it should be legal, but I think it's morally wrong. And it's I can absolutely live with that. You don't like it? That's fine. You think it should be legal? Me too.
Yeah, I think heroin should be legal, but, I don't want anyone to ever do it.
Yeah, I don't want abortions because an abortion means something has happened that shouldn't happen, either an unwanted pregnancy.
Well, no, let's
rape.
Rephrase.
Huh.
An abortion sometimes is the correct medical treatment.
Yes, as the result of something unfortunate happening, like a shittiness with your pregnancy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm explicitly framing it as there are bodies, sometimes that's just your body produces a thing where a stress hormone changes and that's just what needs to happen. That's what should happen.
Yeah, totally.
There's this weird, I want to pull back even from this notion that the concept of an abortion at all is inherently unnatural. It isn't. It's a consequence of us as humans.
Yeah.
And we need to manage that condition and those around them. I really want to take it a step further of if that's what has to happen, that's what has to happen. Now, if it's just you are an autonomous person, you are pregnant, and you are in this particular window, and you have to make a hard decision of, do you want to keep going or not? I don't ever want to be in that position. I never will be in that position unless science pulls off a miracle. And the best I can hope for is all of the support necessary to any individual who has to face that.
Yeah.
And if you put all of those resources into helping that individual without telling them one way or the other how or what to do, you will get less abortions.
I can say with a straight face as a communist to any hardcore anti-abortion person that, look, under communism, there will, unless some crazy shit happens, there will be fewer abortions. As the end result of all of the programs that I want to do, there will be fewer abortions. There will be fewer unwanted pregnancies due to lack of access to regular, conventional, pre-sex birth control, I guess I'll call it. There will be, less poverty. There'll be more education, so people will know more about, how you get pregnant and when, you would be, we've all read that
Every
whole,
single thing that science has told us directly contributes
Pregante. You know what the fuck I'm talking about? It's a Yahoo Answers
let's
video.
drop a little minefield bit. There's a lot of people that are talking about half the country is, doesn't have body autonomy, and everyone fails that. No one here has it. There's another whole half of the population that for the most part, hasn't, and no one talks about it, and no one wants to.
We talk about men's bodily autonomy?
Yes. If you're a man in the U.S., you probably have not had it and are a victim.
You had to sign up for the draft. You don't have bodily autonomy. You can send your ass to war.
Assigned male at birth. Your dick is on the chopping block.
Oh, yeah, that too. I had a conversation.
Not, oh, yeah, that too. That is one of the greatest crimes of humanity that is ongoing.
I had
and
a conversation.
We talk about bodily autonomy without ever bringing it up once.
I talked to my parents about this this last weekend, not in like a I'm not traumatized by my own circumcision. I know. Well, I was gonna say like not everybody has the kind of I don't know positive neutral. I have a very neutral relationship with the shape of my penis, and me and my parents they were like, man, people start telling us that we didn't even know that we just were told by people we're supposed to circumcise you because it's cleaner. Now I'm finding out it's to keep kids from jerking off in the 1800s, and I'm like, yeah,
yes,
correct.
Kellogg, as in the cereal, is responsible for it in America for the most part, and it's wrong. It cannot happen. Body autonomy rights means that is never to be allowed ever. It's not even should be there as a medical treatment. There are 8 billion other things you can try before you have to resort to that.
If you got a cancer on your foreskin, take that shit off.
That basically doesn't exist.
If you
that does not exist. You will get testicular cancer first, and that is treatable. Does not exist.
If my foreskin is closed, I gotta open that up. I need to pee. That's just biology, Dragor.
It is never basically sealed. In the cases it is, you can do procedures on it. And in the case of phimosis, steroid cream and stretching. The number one thing that parents don't want little Jimmy to do is, touch his penis. For fuck's sake, they even covered this in Scrubs. Put this steroid cream on, and you basically have to jerk off as homework. And then you will have a normal dick and a normal sex life. Here you go, Jimmy.
It comes back to what I talk about. How do people's behavior change? Do people's behaviors change because something is illegal? Because, man, I never did drugs. They were illegal my whole life, so I just didn't do them. Or do we socially train people to act certain ways, and then that's what they're going to do, and that's the more effective way to get people to do stuff, which isn't saying, like, legalize murder until people learn. That's an easy one. But, like, for things where, especially, like I said, if it's a culturally ingrained thing, even if that comes from a dumb place, like, you're doing this because of fucking Kellogg's. Like, they don't know that. And if you tell them that, they'll be like,
even
what?
Dumber
That's
than
a
that.
lie.
Kellogg, at least, was based in some weird thing. Religion's even worse.
People know people have the ideas they have in their head, and I've never seen it effective to walk up and just be like, replace all the ideas in your head with these ideas. And they'll go, okay. You got to gradually work people, or you got to like have a long ass explanation. Like my parents if you asked them this question when they were 40, they always said, shut up, I'm doing with my kid what I want. But then like today, last week, they're like, hey, it's weird that I just circumcise everybody. I don't know if we'd circumcise you again. And I was like, I wouldn't want that. They'd be like, yeah, we wouldn't. And then, that was the end of the conversation. And that's a more real kind of thing that would happen with somebody than like, I was trying to think of someone that isn't Stalin. We as Stalin, we as the Western representation of what we say Stalin was, but isn't actually, say you must now do this. And people go, yes, king. And then we all move on. It just never happens like that. Same thing with guns.
It doesn't.
You're going to have to deal with a bunch of lingering gun weirdos for a while. Because
education, baby.
Not like deal with as in letting them shoot people, but they're going to be
exposure.
Guns are now a culturally ingrained part of America for most of America. Not all of us, but a lot of them. So what is the more realistic solution? Coming in and saying, we have now decreed all guns are bad. You must get rid of them. Or a long, boring series of education reforms,
education
housing
reforms,
and food.
Yay!
You have to stabilize the livelihoods of all of these people who also probably, Dragor, have circumcised their children. And
yes and no. It depends. The financial things are what's changing it. Hospitals won't do it if you don't got insurance and things. So it's already happening because of capitalist decay.
It's mostly only socially ingrained with white people anyway. It's mostly white Protestants.
No,
Catholics, I don't
not
think
true
do
at
it
all. It's just universal in America.
I know a lot of Catholics because that used to be how you know if someone was Jewish or not.
Well, right, like, and I didn't get the Catholic protection on that side, so well.
Weird. Yeah, Catholics were anti...
Yes, that's the only tenet of a religion I care for is they said, we need to stop doing this. That's the only thing I'll agree on for any religious thing ever.
If you want to hear more of our conversations, keep listening, because we're about to jump into AC bonus episode that's not a bonus episode because it's part of this episode. It's a bonus within this very episode.
Woo-hoo.
How do you get more bonused than that? Final thoughts before we call it.
Volunteer at conventions to help keep them from dying, please.
You're going to hear about this in the thing, but yeah, basically nobody volunteers at cons anymore because we think of them. Well, all the people who volunteer at cons have continued volunteering at cons and are getting like, all right, it's been a decade and I'm done. And there's not a lot of younger people to replace them because we seem to view cons more as a consumer product than a community event. And that's partially everyone's fault. It's like the culture we're in. It's the cons encourage it because you want to have people. You got to.
If you want to learn partially why we view it that way, Peter Coffin has a video on cancel culture and the transactional relationship of our society, which is feeding why cons are dying.
Or Custom Reality and You. Both of those are relevant to this. We want our own perfect lives that we can pay for, and the only things we see are things we want to see. The customer is always right. Okay, I got nothing. Contribute to the outro.
We're gonna keep going with a little semi-regular cadence, I think, for the summer. You are or are not doing IFC?
I will not be at IFC because I'm at something else. I don't remember what.
Eurofurence?
Yes, that's what I'm at. I'm at Eurofurence. I can't believe it either, people. I'll see you over there. You can all call me an asshole to my face.
I got nothing else. I've been Dragor.
I've been Pepper.
Bye!
Alright.
Garrison Overlook.
What?
I'm looking at a sign that says Garrison Overlook. And I'm like, is that a person's name or a location?
Did we talk to Garrison?
Garrison?
Or no, the photographer from...
Oh, yeah.
Was their name Garrison?
Independent Journalist.
Independent
Garrison.
Journalist.
Well, I think actually they may have changed names. I think they've transitions. So I was talking about.
Oh.
I'm sure though. So no, I think Garrison might be like
I'm
a
fairly
last
certain
name.
when you just mumbled there, none of that was picked up. So either like we scoot in a little bit.
Look, I'm nice and close. I just have to lean forward slightly.
Yeah.
I'll be the one discovering the quality of this audio in another, I don't know.
All right. Look,
Week?
Here. You look at the waveform,
Oh, I'm
okay?
looking at the waveform? You're fine.
That's like you mumbling. And
We'll figure it out.
Okay.
We're outside in literal Pittsburgh.
in literal Pittsburgh, we might get kicked out of where we are, but I do have that magic yellow staff badge. This might get redacted.
We are way in a location high up in a place we are authorized to be.
We technically are.
So,
The doors were unlocked?
we stop giving specific.
Wait. Stop being specific. Every fucking door in this convention has been unlocked this weekend.
Oh, is that metaphorical?
No, not intentionally anyway.
There were a couple of locked doors that I was scared weren't going to get unlocked. There were some scheduling things, and a lot of people pulled a lot of strings to make sure that I was able to have a show with this, and I'm infinitely grateful to everybody. And me saying that I'm grateful to some people does in no way. Oh, so someone we know is now waving at us through the window.
Someone
Hey,
we
what's
know.
going on? You want to be a special guest on this edition of Last Minute Politics?
Yeah, hi everybody.
Oh my goodness.
It's
Hi everybody.
Photons. Hi.
This is that is Photons. In case we couldn't pick that up in the mic. Photons has been working lights here for us, and we got to hang out last night at the After Dark show, and that was freaking special.
Yay!
These two are amazing, but I gotta run. Love you, everybody.
Bye,
Oh, I
Photons.
waved. The microphone does not pick up the wave.
Well, we waved for real life, and then we said bye, Photons, for the mic.
We did. I had Photons on for one of my Doomstream episodes, talking about his theater work at home, and that was pretty fantastic.
We had a dude ask us for money last night, and they thought they were a cop, so they ran away.
Wait, explain? No. There were a lot of pronouns in there, and I did not successfully assign parties.
I tried to say that in as few words as possible.
Yeah, it was dense. Try again.
We're standing outside of the front of the Westin, which is Anthrocon tradition. Or we're at Anthrocon, by the way, if we didn't say that already.
Yeah,
explicitly.
woo,
Hooray, Anthrocon, Pittsburgh.
There's this.
And you stand up front of the Westin, and
Anthrocop.
as long as you're not, just try. I thought you meant right now there was a
No,
cop.
no. Just the name of the con. We'll get into it later.
It'd be better if it was a canine cop, because if it was just a dog, they would not have the ability to arrest us. An anthrocop.
Oh,
is much worse.
Okay, you're standing outside the
Stand
Westin
outside the
at
Westin.
Anthrocon as you do.
That's what you do. And a guy came up and it's very obvious, like, all right, we're about to be asked for money. And I I'm at a con. I've been making money. I'm the most generous you'll ever find me. I shouldn't tell people this. Like, around Saturday night, Sunday night of cons, like, I'm the most likely to be buying everybody food. I've been dealing all weekend, and I feel wealthy. so they walk up, and I'm just like, whip out a 20. I'm like, here, man, blah, blah, blah. Shake his hand, yeah, good luck. And then he immediately just proceeds to, like, start talking about it. I'm like, hey, man, like, he asked if he could, can we have some of what you were smoking? And I'm like, yeah, man, if it wasn't COVID, like, I'm sorry. He's like,
Oh.
Do you have a... I'm like, God, just give me $20. And then, but, like, in a way that he laughed, and it was fine. Like, everything was cool. It wasn't an aggressive situation. it was, I'm not telling this to, like, complain. And so after that interaction, Photons, who was with us, was like, I think that was a cop. And then they bolted. And we're like... I don't know. I'm pretty sure I saw that guy getting walked away by the cops last night. So we were pretty confident they weren't a cop.
Yeah. Yeah.
And our immediate thing, I saw what might be peaks. So I'm cranking it down.
I know. Well, that's me laughing. That's my...
We're all getting excited about the cops.
So, Dorsai is not here at Anthrocon.
Yeah, they haven't been for 2? That was like a just pre-COVID change. It was like a big deal at the time, but then COVID happened, so everyone kind of forgot.
No, I thought 2019 was the last. 2019 was the last Anthrocon, and then.
But it was like known that it wasn't going to continue, at least, because I heard about that before COVID.
Yes, the next con. Yes, the next con was not going to have it, and then I don't know. I thought they were going to be here, and then I guess not. Whatever. That why they are or not here is not the reason I bring this up. I don't know how much the city demanded it, but there is no fleshed out arm of the convention staff here that is replacing the manpower, the person power that Dorsai brought, as far as badge checking, watching doors, and just the overall function they serve.
They're
roving halls, roving info desk, things like that.
Hey, give them a brief background on like why the Dorsai exists and how, like, what even is.
The DI, the Dorsai Irregulars, take their name from a science fiction book or series of novels. I don't really remember that much. They were created originally around old sci-fi conventions, like author conventions. And then, as time went on, they got exposure. Some of them were furries. I think they were asked to work a furry con. I forget what order it all happened. I know Anthrocon is tied to it being one of the oldest furry conventions.
But they came about with the idea of replacing what was seen as an undesirable security force.
Yes, it was basically, there is a better, more mature way to allow people to have fun and still deal with things in a way where you have, in fact, dealt with them and not just slapped a Band-Aid on something.
We're talking about when people are like, how can we do security in a way that isn't just the cops? And this is kind of a crack at that. I mean, if things get way, way out of hand, the cops are called.
Yes.
But
yes, there's
we still
the
live
chain
in
of
America.
Escalations.
We're like,
yes, there's the chain of escalations, and then just from
But it's very infrequent that when something, the Dorsai or an analogous thing, is working a con, that the cops need to be called.
Correct.
It doesn't happen very often, because if someone's just being drunk 9 times out of 10, hell, 999,000 times out of a million, they just need, like, hey man, let's go back to your room.
Yeah,
All
I've
right.
sent several people back to their rooms.
They don't need someone with a gun yelling at them.
Yeah, I've tentatively said yes to doing some volunteer work with them at MagFest. That is the con I worked with them at years ago, where I really got to see them go. MagFest is a 20,000+ person convention. It's a music and games festival. The A is affectionately called alcohol in this acronym, because if you think furries party hard, I have never seen a group of people put furries to shame before.
I've heard Mag is pretty dope.
It is really dope. It is really lit, and the number of incidents is denser than here. But the way Dorsai... Long story short, MagFest had some issues and were getting kicked out of venues, and the way they only got a contract back years ago was the hotel said, yeah, you got to make peace with and bring back the Dorsai. And so that's been the case ever since.
They made it work when they were here. Nothing seemed to explode too hard.
Yes. And that's not to say Dorsai don't have incidents. They do, and I've been witness and had to deal with, like any membership, you also have to work on your own membership.
I could not even, without getting into fucking details, have heard like, oh, blank XYZ member corrupt bot, and then it's been...
It gets dealt with. No
one's perfect, but they're fucking trying.
But yeah, their whole MO. So my favorite interaction to describe Dorsai is I am at a convention and I am younger and someone's with me. And I have a coffee cup with whiskey in it. And a friend of mine is holding a beer can. And I'm like, con policy says you shouldn't have that. They're like, yeah, but you have whiskey. I'm like,
No one knows.
no, I've got coffee, or if they open the lid, I have apple juice. And so one of my favorite Dorsai walks up and looks at the two of us, clearly having overheard this, and looks at the individual and goes, you can't have that. That's the rules. And they're like, you have to either walk away now or dump it. And they go, well, what about me? Like trying to out me. And the
They're about to
Dorsai
take
looks
you
at
down.
me, looks me in the eyes and goes, what's in that cup? And I go, coffee. And they go, thank you. This is the MO of the
You gotta
Dorsai.
train people.
It's
baby.
not that they want you to get away. They understand that the rule of no open alcohol containers in the hallway is a financial rule enforced by the hotel to keep your ass at the bar. That is not why the con is happening. The con is happening to have fun.
You're going through like a way of social education that you couldn't say isn't coercive. I mean, you are being coerced into
It is
doing
absolutely
specific
coerced.
actions. But like, remember when in times of celebration, humans could like just fucking be cool, man? This is the closest we can get to that, because these are situations where we're as far away as we can get while living in the capitalist system, while like breathing the air and swimming in the waters of neoliberal capitalism, to having like non-transactional experiences, kinda, even though they are still transactional. That's kind of what we're going to be talking about today.
Well, that's
our
a great
deeper topic.
segue,
You still buy
because-
tickets. You still are like, you purchase the alcohol as a transaction. You're still like at an event to do a thing, do a part. Like, transactions are taking place, but
That's not the focus.
That's not the point, yeah.
That's how you have to do it in this
you
society.
just got to get through logistics.
So, what you hinted at is when you get to a furry convention, the feel is different. The social norms are different. They are a lot more free and communal.
We
And
don't have
you
a
get-
top-down because we don't have a canon. We are by
Yes.
nature a bottom-up thing because we made it all up ourselves.
Yes, and one of the sentiments you always see hanging around is, drama-free, no politics, and I do ask everyone to take the folks who say those things that aren't influencers, because there's people who weaponize those phrases, but if it's a friend of yours or something who has that view, keep in mind that this might be the only taste of an alternative life that person has ever had under the threat of capitalism. And so it's a defensive gut reaction of being wounded so constantly, so heavily, that people are protective of, for the first time ever, I didn't have to worry about X, Y, Z. And what we're about to talk about with this panel we each have seen at two different conventions, you saw it at BLFC, I saw it here at AC, on how we can take that energy and what we find so sacred and maybe do more with it.
So, the reason we were even talking about the Dorsai is, while the Dorsai do receive benefits from the cons in that, like, I don't know the specifics, but the rooms, badges, like, they
I can tell you, as someone who negotiates contracts with the Dorsai, the things they get are negotiated and essentially done every way every other guest or every other spend on a room or flight or badge is done. Some cons have things more codified or just written down, because like once you have done a Dorsai contract, they tend to be similar.
Sure.
But similar to how First Squared has worked with you, that's a pattern that's just repeated. How we do that with you is how we do that with our other guests, is how we do that with Dorsai.
Yeah.
They're getting the same style of benefits compared to the time they're putting in.
There seems to be. We went to a con that we went to a panel that was it was organizing in the fandom
Or getting
organization.
getting the furry fandom organized. The title might have been tweaked.
Yeah, the point is what we were hoping. When we saw the title, we're like, oh boy, what is this going to be? Like, is this going to be like everybody vote Dem, or is it going to be deeper than that? And it ended up being a bit deeper than that, where their like thesis statement is use cons as conduits for in-person actual organization with the goal of like affecting change, moving from what they called, at least in the version I saw, fandom to actual community, to steer ourselves continually further away from making our events entirely transactional and based on like nothing more than purchases. And I bought the super sponsor thing, so I got XYZ tickets. I am at Disneyland. I got the double deluxe gold package, and I require these certain bullet points.
Yeah.
And towards it, and bend it more towards, we are people getting together for common causes of like actual important shit, of like helping, at the very least starting to help each other materially, and then hopefully continue that and
the hardest
help the world.
I feel a little, it was efficient but perhaps quick on their slides and topic for what I saw on taking the well-intentionedness of having no-kill animal shelters as your charities and analyzing, is that using furry's potential to its maximum? Because they called it out. That is essentially an ever ongoing Band-Aid thing. You are not there's no system you could even ever change unless the structure of society makes it that charity is irrelevant. Or there's always proper funding for these shelters and things. Like,
I won't get super into it, but the charity, the idea of charities and like Salvation Army style, and
in a just society, there is no charity.
No, and doing that, in fact, ends up serving the capitalist class, because it is a Band-Aid that then allows people to just keep hopping along with their broken systems. And really, the more effective tactic is to point out the contradictions and exacerbate them, so you have to actually get change.
One of the things that has come up that they did acknowledge is a lot of people for years now have gotten more and more vocal about, well, can we do 2 charities? Can we bring in the mental health? Can we bring in supporting queer?
Before I forget my thought, it's the problem with charities. Let me better express this, because it just hit me that I kind of explained.
Well, I was about to
charities vest power in the charity and not the people being helped. In this case, it's animals. So like the animals aren't gonna fucking organize. But like soup kitchen versus, all right, homeless people, let's fucking get together.
Yes.
Like,
no. So in the context of animal charities, it's you don't have that other step or layer of indirection. It is the guardians of the animals that place is getting it.
And we like these people. I don't hate
animals. No, but what they called out is more and more people have expressed that they want these queer charities. They want to help each other. The voice is there. I can say from First Squared, Indie FurCon, Motor City FurCon.
How many fucking GoFundMes do we see of tragedies every day flying by on Twitter, and we can't do anything about that? But
there is an aspect of, well, but we want to do well for charity, and we can do better by holding up a puppy versus going, here's the epitaph of the queer kid we didn't save.
Yeah.
And so there is a visual component that is very strongly tied to positive emotional interaction that has, when you want to support the mental health charity, that suddenly is kind of coming into conflict for a lot of people of, I want to talk about that charity when I'm not at a FurCon. I'm here to get the fuck away from that, because it's not even necessarily no politics, that might be their suffering, that might be their day-to-day life, and this is it's not just the escape, this is the safe space. And it's very difficult.
And the counterpoint is that, if we work on it, maybe then it won't continue ruining your life.
Yes,
we
and
can
that
work
is
at the core thing.
That is absolutely the point they made, and I was very happy that in 1 to 2 slides, it was dense and quick, but they covered that. I was very happy.
I would love to see, and it's not that I think that cons should start taking individual, we picked this individual GoFundMe to go, that's the charity, is this one person. But they brought up a couple things in the version I saw at BLFC, which was, hey, we have a dealer's den. How come we don't have basically a services den? Which is why isn't there a booth to sign people up for welfare?
Yes,
hey,
same thing.
Here's how you apply for this grant. Here's how you apply for all these services that do exist, even though they suck. I know a fuck ton of furries who would qualify for Medicaid, but they just haven't, or suck at paperwork, or don't have time,
or how many times did it take you to get it?
I had to go and call and apply 3 times and do this, but I know how to do all that shit. I'm really good at that. I'm very good at following paperwork, and I could work one of those businesses. I would kind of love to. I would love to spend an 8-hour day doing something like that for people.
Yeah.
Basically being a volunteer social worker. But so why do we bring up the door sign? At this point at cons, we're talking about some lofty goals, moving beyond furry. we're barely getting enough volunteers to make conventions operate on the most basic level without eventually becoming, okay, we have to hire blah, 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 and hire blah, 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 and now you're at Disneyland. For cons or Disneyland, you have to pay XY ticket, you got the gold package, we just lean further into that. We lean into fandom consumption of products. Even though we are the products, it's still fucking, I'm a part of this, you come buy my CD. I don't want to go to a thing where like, all right, here's come to the Pepper Coyote stand, and then you blah, 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 move along to stand H. Oh, yeah, you have the fast pass, so you can cut in line at the dealer stand. You can get it. We already do that shit. Like, super sponsors get it an hour early. Yeah, and I don't want to shit on that because I mean, super sponsors they are giving more money. We keep our ticket prices to an absolute minimum because certain whales walk in and dump money on cons. You kind of need that right now.
Well,
but you can volunteer for free.
Yes, you can. And a quick note on like the upper tiers of like, oh, it's the furries with money, and like I assure you,
we need the money.
You can, no, but what I'm saying is, behind the scenes for every con budget, for every badge tier you sell, there is a breakdown of what % of it is going where. So like what % of it is going back as swag or benefit or spent on the attendee. Because you have to plan this stuff out. You have to be financially sound. And
it's
the
like
super
a
sponsor
much bigger Kickstarter.
Yeah. So the super sponsor tier essentially exists as, yes, you are going to get proportionally more, you're going to get quantitatively more stuff than the attendee, but proportionally you are getting less. More of that upper tier is straight up going to the con. If you have ever been to a super sponsor dinner or brunch, the #1 line is, thank you, you fund the cool shit. If we only had attendees, we would have a bare bones con.
Yeah, you'd have like a room.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. So like it's not about, anyway, I don't need to keep ranting about that.
The greater point is that
cons are hurting.
You need to, if you're listening to this and you go to cons, you have the opportunity to volunteer, like, do it.
To be clear, the way cons are today are not sustainable. I've been increasingly open with my level of burnout and how I continue to reduce me doing staffing at cons. And I understand that I can bring things to these events that either, others can't, or just because I'm here and fluent with it, I can do it faster. But I'm tired. Every con I've been to has been hit heavily with staff just not wanting to do it anymore. The staff that just ghost or go AWOL because health issues, or life, because life in this country is getting harder.
Yes.
And now we have COVID is endemic at First Squared. One of my key people went home Friday morning because they felt bad, blipped positive. And we were already short-staffed.
Yeah.
So
everyone's short-staffed. Like AC, I've heard, is running at basically 25% staff.
Yes.
Like,
MFF was pretty screwed.
Insane. That is insane. This is the biggest AC ever, and they have 25% of the expected staff.
Biggest AC, maybe biggest. Is it?
Yeah.
Biggest AC ever.
9,700.
How many of those staffers who just went through this slog are going to go?
Never going to do it
nah.
Because that sucked. For some people, and for a lot of people, because you have to do like 12-hour days and everyone shits on you the whole time because they want the gold package and they paid for the consumer product. Like, we're already geared to act this way, and it's not any individual's fault. We live and breathe the air of neoliberal capitalism, and we are just trained from birth to be transactional with absolutely everything that we do, and now it has absolutely permeated our individual social relationships. Peter Coffin wrote a book.
It is
custom
good.
reality, and everyone has built their own personal reality that they subscribe to in a very literal sense of like, I pay for this and I want like.
Yes.
And that sounds like I'm shitting on individuals to just get good or get better or become enlightened, but no, they didn't get that way fucking by laziness. They live and breathe in the waters of the fucking ideology of the ruling class, which wants us to do that because it benefits them the most, not because of some evil secret cabal, but because money.
Yeah. The other one that they highlighted on the topic of money in a little bit is, specifically the one I saw was, it started pivoting towards mutual aid, and that was kind of the branching point from the charity things. Like, okay, cons are hurting, you have to staff them. Once you staff them, now what? Because I don't know how much it was doom and gloom for yours, but for ours, it was blatantly said, big cons are going to start dying or worse. The big one that they called out was they're going to get bought. A big con is going to get bought.
Sad. It probably will.
And that will be a domino effect. Because you already have...
Well, here's the thing. Once a con is bought, will it be profitable? Because on
it'll be
average...
made profitable.
I'm sure they could get it there, but it would have to entirely change who's even going, and then your ship of Theseusing your way down to, like, is it even a FurCon anymore?
No.
And we'll be the guys sitting there like, I remember in 2019
Did
we had fun.
Did they do anthropomorphic versus furry for you?
No, I don't think so.
So we got into what is furry and what is that definition in the context of this conversation and in the context of capitalism. And their slide was, is Tony the Tiger furry? No. Because furry implies a personal aspect. Its goal is not capitalism. Tony the Tiger
It's
exists to
bottom up.
sell you something.
That was a top-down product marketed and created by a team with their many drafts and the thing envisioned to sell a product.
Not even that it was a marketing team. Its sole existence, regardless of how it got there,
If Frosted
is not
Flakes
its
did
art.
not exist, Tony the Tiger would not exist. No one made Tony the Tiger because they loved tigers.
But we're
They made it
not
'cause they wanted
talking
to sell
about
cereal.
that. We're talking about, is this anthropomorphic tiger right there?
I think that
furry?
I think that discounts it. I think if
It's-
you attempted to make something that was furry through the process I just described, no. That's not like you've separated it from what the fuck, like the spirit of what you're doing is now so fundamentally
Yeah.
disconnected from what furry is that you would have to use different words.
But we're looking at it through the lens of Twitter, where you don't have all of that context. You have Tony the Tiger interacting with furries. And the quick test is this thing I'm looking at, now if it's a corporate media brand, like, we have the obvious answer, but there are more subtle things out there, especially in the realm of astroturfing. Ugh. But is Tony
Is the Orangina cougar furry? Or any of those ads? There's many of them.
It boiled down to separating, if we care about furry, what do we care about it, which means what could it be or what is it not in service of. And so our definition came to, furry can be many things. It is not for capital. And that was like the guiding thought. I found it interesting from an educational standpoint of, if there was someone in that room that had not gone through any of this before, how effective is, what is that cartoon for? How effective is that question for getting the thought process going? I thought it was pretty cool. It seemed well received in the room I was in. I'm not saying, like, throw out the rest of the context because it's irrelevant, but in the context of the panel I saw as being someone's first interaction, I liked the I liked that they could laser focus. Tony the Tiger is to sell you shit that isn't good for you. That is not a furry, that is an anthropomorphic tiger. Did they give the use case example of the fundraising thing for fighting and helping with wages in Haiti? Was it Haiti? And they used it as an example of, like, okay, you can give money to some general thing, or you can help get involved and organize.
The examples given for moving around, throwing around money, and they didn't get into a ton of detail with it, but they mentioned like fund for. Why don't we have an option at your reg? Talk about bare minimum stuff where we like click this button to stick $10 into the food fund. Stick $10 to put it into the housing fund, and then broke people. It helps essentially. It lowers the cost threshold for attendance to your cons.
Yes.
And it helps out. I mean, how more local can you get? You are directly helping your community. You're
Yeah,
not
especially if it's like, you got your local address here?
You're not filtering it through so many layers of charities or NGOs. Not to shit on every charity every con does. Give me a break here, people. Give me a break, people who don't exist and aren't being this critical of me. The people I'm making up in my head. But instead of being filtered through layers of whatever, you just directly give resources to the people who need the resources, which I think is the most in the direction I want to move as possible. And then, as people receive the assistance, that gets into my whole freaking spiel. Now they have the time to, like, educate themselves or fucking dedicate more of their lives to class struggle, or at least be able to go to a con where they can then be around people who are more of a positive influence, who can then maybe move them towards those things. Like, if you're talking about building a thing, building a mass movement of just regular-ass people, there's a lot of regular-ass people who are into furries, people who are, like, seen as weirdos by everybody else, who freaking
How many first timers have you interacted with this weekend?
It's not a lot, actually. I've had a lot of, like, not just first AC, but, like, first con.
Yes.
Period.
Ton. And I always say this is one of the most magical cons for that, because if you know how it goes, if people are having their first con at AC and it is broadcasting these certain things a lot harder as being core to the experience, you're not even having to do explicit conversion work or coercion work. It's just, you show up, this is how we are and how you get this. If you want more things like this, come on over.
This is how we act. Like, we can have... It takes a shit lot of effort, but the fact that we're kind of insulated for these 3-day periods at a time, you can try to counter the ideology of, like, it doesn't have to be always transactional and about you give me this and you get this. Like, you can have a bit of actual community, a bit of like not just focusing everything on the hustle.
Yes.
That we can team up, have some space for just helping each other out, for education, for developing, even fucking developing our skills at all of our various crafts. This could be more of a trade show type situation.
There's a topic that they did not bring up that I do want to follow up with them that I think is one of the core blocks to what they want. And just getting more volunteers is only step one.
Yeah, it's the bare minimum step one, because you can't do any of this stuff with as few people as we have right now.
No, and where I'm going for this is how conventions are structured. And they are structured primarily as very top-down, hierarchical structures that mimic the current capitalist stuff we have today. And a lot of the problems you see in an office, you see at FurCons. So, like,
they have the same they have a corporate structure. They have like a CEO and assistant DM.
Even though we're 501c3s all over, because that's all we know. And it's also like the technical title, like legally.
Operating
I
within our
believe Uncle
system.
Kage is the chief executive officer of the official Anthrocon entity, but they are also a 501c3 board and have codified their voting.
If you want to talk about how you're not influenced by like the world you live in, no, I live these pure thoughts and I am a child of light and all this shit.
Yeah.
You can't even form a supposedly counteracting group without being forced to conform to the same exact structures as a bank. Like, you can't structure if you want to do your radical whatever thing, you still have to, on the surface, have this is our CEO, this is our CFO, this is our CEO,
Yes.
this is our...
But that's the legal entity, and
Yeah.
you do have to have that because we live in capitalism.
So the best case, you have to create basically a shadow version of that, and then make sure throughout, like, it's structured.
It's not a shadow version. It's just, you have to... What's interesting about 501c3s is, from the legal standpoint, you can codify your own actual laws that are legally binding. If there ever was a thing that's currently still nifty and I think functional, it's that, as long as there isn't crazy amounts of money involved.
As I say, if the person at the top has enough means, then that means anything.
No, but if you're talking a bunch of people get together, like these smaller Midwest FurCons, for example, like, they can write in their articles that say, here's how our voting structure and membership works. And then if you fuck with that, one of the members can go, I'm taking you to this small court and we're overturning this decision. And things like that happen all the time. Ask people on theater boards. But, like, that's one of the biggest efforts I've been trying to do in First Squared is to flatten. I as a con chair, am important insofar as the figurehead, the public speaker aspect, the interface to the hotel. Those are roles that have to happen, just the same as I can't work a fucking soundboard. And so I want to use furry to deconstruct this notion, and deconstruct this notion of staffing as a
special privileged position.
Thank you. I was trying to find it. I couldn't get it. Staffing should not be a special privileged position.
Do not make a special body of armed men. the Dorsai.
Look, their arms are usually holding filk instruments when they're off duty, okay?
Sure.
But, shit, what was I just saying?
Which isn't to say that, like, strong leadership,
yeah.
that leadership is stupid.
No,
But-
you do need it, and you, especially during these transitional periods, you need some form of dictatorship.
Somebody's gotta
to
make a
provide
fucking
the structure.
call.
You have to make a call. You can vote yourselves to death. You can indecision organizations to death.
Did Howlfest happen? Because that shit sure seemed to be going crazy.
No,
with that.
I believe it is later this year or next year.
In that initial 6 months, it was a fucking frenzy of exactly what you're talking about. How basically they micromanaged themselves into like no one was happy about anything, and there was like 6 board overturnings in like a month, and then all the GO and then the name and the like,
The hardest, the biggest part where Pepper and I had some fun leftist infighting. I did air quotes. But the hardest part you run up against is furry conventions are limited resource entities. So when you hear Pepper and I talk about we live in a post-scarcity world, well, yes, the world can do that. The world has easy access to this infrastructure.
if resources were evenly distributed. Yeah.
But furcons aren't. And the number one thing you run up into is you have me, Pepper, and others, and there's going to be fights and arguments over how to spend those limited resources, and everyone is going to be correct. And this is where you need that enforcement of, okay, here's how the voting on this works, and how the vote goes is how the vote goes. Because at some point, you have to have an event. You have to do the thing, even if it's gonna suck.
You have to actually make the shit. And
You can't let perfection be the death of you.
cons cannot do most, like, there's so many nice ideas. There's a lot of very utopian thinking going on, and they're like, how come cons don't simply blah, blah, blah? And it's like, how do you think anything works? There were people complaining about how the cops at AC were acting too much like cops, and it's like, what the fuck is Anthrocon supposed to do about the Pittsburgh police force?
The only reason it wasn't a worse situation is
sorry.
the city of...
upset at AC for that, not just upset at the cops in general.
Yes.
Like, that's fine, be upset at the cops, but like they're like somehow AC should like be making them stop.
Yeah, how? What can Uncle Kage do to a sheriff?
Officer, gets tased. They would punch Uncle Kage off the stairs. We've seen it happen. Like we've seen old men get kicked down. Fucking
Notable
the cops
people
don't give a shit anymore.
Yeah, none whatsoever.
They haven't for a long time, but we just kept it on tape every weekend now.
Yeah. So, like, you're mad at AC, and all things considered, though, it could have been worse. Why wasn't it worse with all these cops here? I'll tell you why. Anthrocon is integrated with the city of Pittsburgh primarily because of the financial impact it happened to bring, and the city and the Chamber of Commerce noticed. I know this because this happened with First Squared at a smaller scale. They just showed up one day like, hey, we noticed what you do. Here.
You guys make a lot of money.
Yep.
We saw this line go up.
So, police protect property and capital, and the city of Pittsburgh fucking loves Anthrocon's money dick. So, overall, the police were probably very clearly instructed. You
cool,
can't,
man.
yeah, like, don't fuck our money. They're weird
Like,
queers.
these are all a bunch of gays, and if you do anything, they're gonna get mad. So.
And they're not going to spend the money here
And
anymore.
they will immediately report you. They will be screaming at you and getting your badge number and videoing the whole thing. Don't.
Yeah.
and for the most part, the cops I see here, at least in the past, they were a little younger this year. It's usually like the oldest man.
Yeah,
Sits in the
yeah.
corner. I'm like, hey, do you get forced? Do you draw lots over who has to work here, or do you like argue over who gets to? Like, do you want to work AC?
Yeah.
He's like, I volunteered for this post. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, because it's got to be the cushiest shit. Nothing happens here. The cops are, like we were just talking about, the cops are almost never actually needed here to do anything.
Correct.
They just sit down, they watch furries and listen to music.
Yep.
Text. Like, they sit on their phone.
That's it.
It's a very easy, and they're probably getting paid triple overtime because that's how this shit works.
Yep. What can they do? If the city of Pittsburgh and the owners of the DLLC say
DLCC.
they're DLCC,
The DLC.
fuck.
The downloadable content. I was thinking of the CDL, the CDL Center. The
Downloadable cop content.
Commercial driver's license.
I don't have an answer other than, like, it's gross and disgusting. I got to see a bunch of furries play. Ooh, can you, like, take pictures of me where, like, you're booking me or something? And, like, look, there was a period of time where a younger me would be like, oh, look at this.
I would have thought it was funny. I probably saw that happen in like 2012, and I was like, oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, come on,
And,
man,
like,
no.
what can we say to say, yeah, you can't do that? Who has the authority to say you can't do that at our event?
Don't friendlify the cops.
And, you know, the answer is, don't have them there.
All right, I probably had other points I was wanting to get to, but whatever.
Yeah, we're looking at time.
What do you think about Anthrocon? Just general stuff. Like, how was your? I guess I could try to I don't know, to be fair and balanced. because we are at cons, and depending on who you talk to, like, do we work at cons? You're gonna have to kill the ant, Dragor. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I probably killed
You're
it.
gonna have to smash it.
Or whatever.
Dragor keeps trying to like shoo this ant away, and it keeps going on like on the laptop on their hand, and I was like, get it. They haven't gotten me, have they?
Fair and balanced. Why did you just say that curse word at me?
Like people will be like, well, why aren't you volunteering? And then I might say, I kind of do volunteer at cons.
Panel hosting is volunteering.
We
Absolutely.
get to have a fun job, but then I also try, especially this one, I was trying to be a little bit more not self-sacrificial.
How much hours of effective prep and training go into what you are able to do on that stage?
Yeah, but it still comes down to like a what are you doing for the con here? Because me spending 3 hours doing a volunteer post is infinitely more valuable to the con, arguably, than me playing the trombone. So I tried to do a little bit of stuff that was like, I don't know, adding to a thing without expecting anything in return. There was the first 2 marching band. And I'm
yes.
like, okay, should I just go be drunk on the corner for the next 4 hours in this break? Or should I actually, what I would have been doing was I would have been at my dealer's table. And instead I'm like, no, I'll go to the rehearsal, I'll go to the lineup, which is this time, I'll spend the 2.5 hours doing the parade.
Convention content is also our lifeblood. So, like, you of all people have commented on this. You performing your stuff and yours and Fox's stuff. Like, does it specifically need to be you? No, that's kind of the
point.
point.
Something.
But you are at a level of both proficiency and notoriety.
They can just plug me into a slot and be guaranteed an hour of relatively quality entertainment.
Yes. And it is furry.
They don't have to worry about what I'm doing.
Furry content. Yeah. It is very specifically furry content.
And I get up there and complain about the man the whole time.
Whereas if someone goes up there,
they let me be ideologically whatever the fuck.
Yes.
No one has ever told me to not talk about something on stage. And I don't understand why. I can't believe it, actually.
Because everyone's drunk and it's the After Dark show. And it's like, it's...
Maybe they just think I'm kidding. Because I'm like, the pandemic, I've been reading a lot of Karl Marx, and I think Lenin's a cool guy. But and I just
it's part of the charm. It's part of the charm. But like that is furry content, and that is good. Compare that with, I love it. If a fursuit band gets up there and does cover songs, they're still bringing the fursuit aspect.
Especially in fursuits, like.
But if someone just goes up and is themselves playing cover songs, there's still a furry doing it at Furry Space, and I'm glad that we are providing the environment where someone feels safe to do it. But that's not hitting the content quota of what people expect coming to the event. And I don't even mean from a transactional standpoint. I mean from when you go to a fur con and you're going to go see music, there are certain expectations. You can go see Joe Schmo play a cover song somewhere else.
I think if the people participating in whatever act are at least fandom members and doing it for fandom things and not just like booked outside talent, because we had what was it, Otter Confusion, Otter Chaos thing was. It's a video game music concert that I've now seen a couple times by Key Otter and Cornell. Shout out to them. And they have they put together like a 6 to 9 piece, essentially a chamber orchestra. They have trombone, theremin, accordion, and keyboard is the core one. That's what Key's playing. Then Cornell's on like bass guitar, rhythm section, all that. And they're playing fully like. The songs aren't original, but they are original arrangement melody versions of video game songs, and it's something that would also definitely work well at MagFest, and I think they actually have probably played at MagFest, I think 1 or 2 of them. But everyone on stage is furry, everyone in the audience is furry, all of the talking in between is
I'm not saying you can't have that, but when it comes down to your event now has to deal with the limited resource of your main event stage. Which one are you gonna put up? And it's always gray area.
And this worked out where this is about 12 people putting time, effort into the same thing. They did the rehearsal, they put on the thing, they came ready, they didn't eat up a million hours of prep and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And they were on also, I think, second or third stage? This was where we were also.
Second stage.
Alternative to the dance, because not everybody wants to, hang out and do EDM necessarily.
Yeah.
And that's what I see a lot of Alkali stuff, our stuff, the late night programming content that is not just dance comp. I have no problem going against the dance comp, because not everyone necessarally likes it. I like the dance comp, I have no problem with it. But a lot of people who like my music don't necessarily care about the dance comp. They'd rather come listen to the penis song. I've had a very fun AC. I barely was at my table, but I still seem to have done pretty decently in sales. Thank you very much, furries.
I guess whenever this gets released, but part of I like being honest on this stuff, and I've been saying it, and we'll see. But Today was.
Oh, we don't get paid for shows. I don't know.
No. None
That's
whatsoever.
the other part of that. That's why they're like volunteering. If I don't sell CDs, like if I do a shitty show, I don't sell CDs. It seems kind of merit based to me, and I like it.
Part of the whole burnout thing and like content thing, I don't know, stress is different. Cons are different for me. Today at AC was a pretty good charity Who's Line, and that'll be the last one I run for a little while.
I had a great time at 11 a.m. Sunday charity Who's Line.
11 a.m.
Actually had a
charity
really good
Who's
time.
Line was pretty freaking crazy.
It was good because I was very like sober, so I was more like
Yeah.
awake. I had like a cup of coffee. I'm like, damn, I'm like refreshed.
You were on.
I did okay. I was pretty happy.
But it was silly and it was good, but I have not been handling stage fright. That's a real thing, whether I volunteer to put in a panel or not. Life stress in the world around, it's just...
So you're gonna go
this
work.
is my way of saying I'm reducing all staffing things and a lot of performance things, because kind of what I said of I miss just kind of showing up at a furry con and feeling like me. I want to help and keep doing stuff, but it's been feeling pretty isolated lately.
I was gonna say you could do a low responsibility thing, but if you did, you'd end up booted up into high responsibility.
Yeah, well, or you just keep the strict bounding boxes. I will
Be like,
still help.
No.
I will still
check badges. That's what I'm doing.
I will still go and host a first FurCon. That's being a TA. That's easy. I will assist Iggy on certain panels. I can make a quip here and there, and otherwise, I'm doing stuff I do and helping my friend do a cool game show. I want to kind of go back to being a little bit more supportive because it's less stressful.
I'd go to people's stuff.
And you know what? There's a certain aspect of it where I'm not the most popular person ever, but like, how long have I been doing this? Maybe I should see about propping up some other people. That's the whole point. When you do the big group stuff and pull up new musicians and things for the variety show, same thing. I like that furry boosts new people. I got that break way back when to just try out doing more improv stuff, and I get to do all of this stuff. I am asked to do things just because I hung around. There are other people that are just as good as I am that just don't have the luck of being where I am. And that's played into the decision a little bit too.
Well, that's to tie it back to talking about like the housing fund, the food fund.
Yeah.
The reason Dragor can be an old soul of cons is because you've always had the means to be able to attend.
I've had an easier time than most doing this.
I've been able to kind of like, not con, a nicer version of con my way into a help from friends or straight up transactional. I'll do this show, you got to do this. Okay, like
Yeah.
that. I've been able to go to a lot of cons, and that's kind of like the more you can show up to, you eventually become kind of like a fixture.
Yes.
That's what you were talking about with the contracts. People tend to just do whatever they did last year over and over again. So
And that's hard
if
to
you can
fight, even
sneak
for the better.
If you can sneak in and do a good thing even once, there's always a chance
Yes.
that it gets wrapped up in just being, oh, that's a good idea that happens every year.
Yes. Very
And
much
you can
so.
only do that by getting in staff and starting doing stuff and eventually getting
Unlike the
someone
Democratic
listening.
Party, you actually can get voted into a con and end up running the damn thing. I
Yeah.
see it all the time.
Because we don't have too many ultra powerful we
do
don't have
have-
a furry bougie.
We do have to address the hierarchy because there's people that should be able to do other things more easily. You know, if there are conventions, Pepper, where if I were to go to them and say, hey, I would like to volunteer, they would say, you have to spend a year watching The Doors first. I would decline.
Yeah.
Unless, that was literally the thing, oh my God, we need to have people watch Doors. We're having
Yeah.
security. That would
They
be
do it as
different.
not a hazing thing, but you gotta stand around for a million years first.
No, can we have a discussion
I have a
and
lot of
I'll tell you what I've
experience.
done?
Can I- Yeah.
Don't waste that. Be on the lookout in your communities. If anyone is staff listening to this for any reason, we joke and say voluntel, but be honest and say hey, it's better when there's more of us. It's easier when there's more of us.
Oh,
Asterisk. The
If there's
management
enough,
and argument
it
aside.
becomes fun because
It
there's not
does.
too much work to do and you can fucking hang out a little bit. And instead of doing 20-hour shifts, you're doing 6 hours.
Or you're doing a 3-hour shift because you have enough people.
Exactly.
Because if a quarter of the attendees just did more volunteer stuff and they had reduced badge prices, the cost of putting on the event goes
go
down.
down. The more
Because the more you have volunteers, the more...
The less you gotta pay for. What's gonna happen is, like you said, bought. Why will it get bought? Because they will suddenly not be able to afford to put the event on, and someone will swoop in saying, "Hi, I can provide all that stuff you need. You just gotta sign over the rights of everything."
Yep. And it'll be things like, oh, well, you'll still have your creative board. I know I've sold people on this.
You stay blah blah, and you can tell us how to program, and then 2 years later, those people are gone.
That is truthfully the model I am bringing to First Squared, in that the opposite is also a problem, in that, like, oh, well, I'm the director of Reg, and therefore I'm a board member of this organization, and those are two different things. The legal board is the interface to capitalism and the law. Their job is to not fuck that up, and their job is to watch if the
Vanguard
creatives...
Party. You're the Vanguard Party of the revolution.
Yes,
Maintain the fucking structural integrity of your non-shitty board.
Yeah, well, and it's like, the board is there to look at the con once in a while and go, hey, they're about to do a thing that's going to get us legally fucked. The board is there to just watch out for that and stop that. They don't need to be figureheads. They don't need to be directors of departments. A board member could be an assistant to a department, because on site they're like, I do all this board legal shit between cons. I want to have an easy at con.
Have a nice con.
I'll help you a little bit here and there. And
they just gotta, as long as they're actually doing stuff and not themselves sitting there being figureheads and not actually doing anything.
Yes.
This is not a dig at Kage, by the way. Like,
Kage does a shit ton.
I know, as I was saying, he works his fucking ass off.
I was going to say, I called out, I am creating this at First Squared. I am codifying the split of department heads and board. We're doing it. Sure. It's done already. We're trying it.
Well,
we've gone on way too long.
This has been Last Minute Politics.
I've been Dragor.
I've been Pepper Coyote. We're at Anthrocon. I'm sorry if there's too many like birds and trucks and wind in the recording, but we're sitting outside having a nice evening.
Yeah.
I hope you have a nice evening as well.
Let's do the thing. Bye.